I'm Sophia Martinez, and I'm 31 years old. 13 years ago, my entire family disowned me based on lies my sister Rebecca told them. They believed I had stolen money from our dying grandmother and destroyed important family documents. For over a decade, I lived as the family outcast, building my life from nothing while they celebrated holidays without me. But last month, I discovered the truth about what Rebecca really did, and now the tables have completely turned. What happened next will shock you, because karma has a way of finding the guilty. Before we dive into this incredible journey of family betrayal and ultimate justice, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, because this story has more twists than a pretzel factory. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this family drama unfolds. Growing up, Rebecca and I were only 2 years apart, but we couldn't have been more different. She was the golden child, blonde, bubbly, and somehow always managed to charm her way out of trouble. I was the responsible one, the straight-A student who worked part-time jobs and saved every penny. Our parents, Maria and David Martinez, always praised Rebecca's free spirit while expecting me to be the rock of the family. When I was 18 and Rebecca was 16, our beloved grandmother Elena was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Abuela Elena had always been my refuge, the one person who truly understood me. She lived in the small apartment above our family's bakery, and I spent countless hours there, learning her recipes and listening to her stories about our family's history. During her final months, Abuela Elena asked me to help her organize her affairs. She was worried about the family recipes, old photographs, and most importantly, her will. She had accumulated quite a bit of money over the years, nearly $200,000 from the bakery's profits and her late husband's life insurance. She wanted everything documented properly. Mija, she told me one afternoon, her frail hands holding mine, I'm leaving the bakery and most of my money to your parents, but I want you to have something special. You've always been the one who cared about our family's legacy. She showed me a safety deposit box key and explained that she had put $50,000 aside for my college education, along with her grandmother's antique jewelry collection that had been passed down through generations. The key was hidden in her bedroom, inside an old recipe box that only I knew about. Promise me you'll use this money wisely, and that you'll keep our family traditions alive, she whispered. I promised, tears streaming down my face. 2 weeks later, Abuela Elena passed away peacefully in her sleep. The funeral was devastating, but the real nightmare began 3 days afterward. I was in my room, studying for my SATs, when my father stormed in with a face I'd never seen before, pure rage mixed with heartbreak. How could you do this to us? To your own family, he shouted, throwing papers at me. Confused, I picked up the documents. They were bank statements showing that the safety deposit box had been emptied just 1 day after the funeral. $50,000 gone. But that wasn't all. There were also photocopies of what appeared to be altered pages from Abuela Elena's recipe book, with several family recipes torn out or scribbled over. Dad, I don't understand. I haven't touched anything. Abuela told me about the safety deposit box, but I was waiting until... Don't lie to me, he interrupted. Rebecca told us everything. She saw you sneaking around Abuela's apartment the night after the funeral. She found the empty recipe box and these destroyed papers in your backpack. My blood ran cold. Rebecca said what? Dad, that's not true. I would never. But before I could finish, my mother appeared in the doorway, holding the empty recipe box with tears in her eyes. Sophia, we trusted you. Abuela Elena trusted you. How could you steal from your dying grandmother and destroy our family history? Rebecca appeared behind them, her eyes red from crying, or at least pretending to cry. I'm so sorry I had to tell them, she said, her voice breaking. I saw you taking the money and the jewelry. I thought maybe you needed it for college, so I didn't want to say anything at first. But when I found our great-great-grandmother's recipes torn up and thrown away, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. The room spun around me. Rebecca, what are you talking about? I never took anything. You know I would never hurt Abuela's memory like that. But the evidence seemed overwhelming. The empty safety deposit box that only I supposedly knew about. The destroyed recipes. Rebecca's tearful testimony. Even my own parents, who had raised me for 18 years, looked at me like I was a stranger. "We're giving you one chance to tell the truth and return what you stole," my father said, his voice cold. "If you don't, you're no longer part of this family." I begged them to listen, to investigate further, to talk to the bank about security footage. But they had made up their minds. Rebecca's story was believable because it painted me as the calculating older sister who had manipulated a dying woman for money. When I refused to confess to something I didn't do, they followed through on their threat. I was kicked out that very night with nothing but a suitcase of clothes and my car. They didn't pay for my college. They didn't invite me to family gatherings. When I tried calling, they hung up. When I showed up at the bakery, they had the locks changed. For 13 years, I built my life completely alone. I worked multiple jobs, put myself through community college, and eventually started my own successful marketing consultancy. I sent birthday cards that went unanswered. I called during holidays and was blocked. I tried reaching out through mutual friends, but the family had convinced everyone that I was a thief who had robbed a dying woman. Rebecca, meanwhile, flourished in my absence. She took over helping with the bakery, married her high school sweetheart in a beautiful ceremony I saw photos of on social media, and became the perfect daughter who could do no wrong. She even got the family recipes restored, claiming she had found backup copies that I had missed when I destroyed the originals. I eventually stopped trying to reconcile. The pain was too much, and I convinced myself that maybe I was better off without them. I built a successful business, bought my own home, and created a chosen family of friends who became my support system. But last month, everything changed when I received a phone call that would shatter Rebecca's perfect facade and expose the truth that had been buried for over a decade. The call came from someone I never expected to hear from again, my cousin Miguel, Rebecca's ex-husband's brother. Miguel and I had been close as children, but like everyone else, he had cut contact after the scandal. His voice was shaky when he called me on a Tuesday morning in October. "Sophia, I need to tell you something about Rebecca. I should have spoken up years ago, but I was afraid no one would believe me." My heart started racing. "Miguel? How did you even get my number?" "I hired a private investigator to find you." "Listen, I know this is going to sound crazy, but Rebecca confessed everything to my brother Carlos during their divorce proceedings 2 months ago. She's been using that money she stole from Abuela Elena to fund a gambling addiction, and now she owes some very dangerous people a lot of money." I nearly dropped the phone. "What are you talking about?" Miguel took a deep breath. Carlos recorded their conversation because she was threatening to take everything in the divorce, including custody of their kids. She admitted that she stole the money from the safety deposit box the day after Abuela's funeral. She knew about it because she had been listening at the door when Abuela told you about it. She also destroyed those recipes on purpose because some of them contain notes about other hidden assets that Abuela had wanted you to find. The room started spinning. 13 years of exile, 13 years of believing my family thought I was a thief, 13 years of rebuilding my life from nothing, all because of Rebecca's lies. She said she initially just planned to take some of the jewelry to pawn for drug money, Miguel continued. But when she realized how much cash was in the safety deposit box, she took everything. She knew she needed a cover story, so she planted evidence in your backpack and convinced your parents that you were the thief. I was silent for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what my sister had done. "Miguel, do you have proof of this?" "Carlos has the recording. Rebecca doesn't know he recorded it. He's willing to share it with you, but he's scared about getting involved. Rebecca threatened him during the divorce, said she'd make sure he never saw his kids again if he exposed her. That afternoon, I met Carlos at a coffee shop across town. He looked haggard and nervous, constantly checking over his shoulder. Carlos had always been a good guy, quiet, hardworking, and devoted to his children. Seeing him like this made me realize just how dangerous Rebecca had become. Sophia, I'm so sorry, he said, sliding a flash drive across the table. I should have known something was wrong when she always had money for expensive things, but claimed she was broke whenever the kids needed something for school. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop and listened to 43 minutes of Rebecca's drunken confession. Her voice was slurred, but every word was crystal clear. She detailed exactly how she had stolen from our grandmother, how she had destroyed the recipes to cover her tracks, and how she had manipulated our parents into believing I was the guilty one. But the most shocking part came near the end of the recording. The stupid bitch still doesn't know that Abuela left her more than just that $50,000. There were bonds, Carlos. Bearer bonds worth another $150,000 that were hidden behind that family photo in the recipe box. I found them after I planted the evidence in Sophia's room. I've been cashing them out slowly for 13 years. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the laptop. Rebecca hadn't just stolen $50,000 from me. She had stolen $200,000, plus invaluable family heirlooms that had belonged to our ancestors. Carlos leaned forward. There's more, Sophia. She's been using your grandmother's identity to take out credit cards and loans. She's accumulated over $300,000 in debt, all in Abuela Elena's name. The gambling addiction started about 5 years ago, but it's gotten completely out of control. She owes money to some very bad people. I stared at him. How is that even possible? Abuela died 13 years ago. She never reported the death to all the credit agencies. She's been intercepting any mail that came to your parents' house for Elena Martinez, and she had access to all of Abuela's personal information. Identity theft of deceased people is more common than you'd think. The pieces were falling into place. Rebecca hadn't just destroyed my relationship with my family. She had been systematically destroying our grandmother's legacy for over a decade. Carlos, I need you to understand something, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. I'm going to expose all of this. I'm going to make sure my family knows the truth, and I'm going to make sure Rebecca faces consequences for what she's done. Are you prepared for that? He nodded. I have copies of everything. Bank statements, credit card applications, even photos of some of the jewelry she pawned. I documented everything during the divorce because I was afraid she'd try to hide assets. That night, I sat in my home office and developed a strategy. I couldn't just call my parents and play them the recording. They'd been believing Rebecca's lies for 13 years, and they might dismiss it as some kind of trick or fake audio. I needed undeniable proof, and I needed to present it in a way that would force them to confront the truth. I contacted a private investigator who specialized in financial fraud. Within a week, she had compiled a comprehensive report documenting Rebecca's crimes: identity theft, credit fraud, wire fraud, and theft. The evidence was overwhelming and legally solid. But I wanted more than just legal justice. I wanted my family to understand the magnitude of what Rebecca had done to all of us. I wanted them to see how their golden child had been manipulating them for over a decade while I suffered in exile. I also realized something else. Rebecca's gambling debts meant she was desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things, and I needed to be prepared for her to escalate when she realized her world was about to come crashing down. So I did something Rebecca would never expect from the responsible sister she had framed all those years ago. I decided to give her a taste of her own medicine, using her desperation against her in a way that would expose her true nature to our entire family. My plan began with patience and observation. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly reached out to extended family members and old family friends, not to tell them the truth yet, but to reconnect and understand the current family dynamics. What I discovered was both heartbreaking and infuriating. My Aunt Carmen, my mother's sister, reluctantly agreed to meet me for coffee after I reached out through LinkedIn. She was nervous, constantly looking around as if she might be caught consorting with the family pariah. Sophia, you know I always loved you like my own daughter, she said, stirring her coffee anxiously. But what you did to Abuela Elena, it broke all of our hearts. I bit my tongue and let her talk. Through careful questioning, I learned that Rebecca had been the one keeping the family narrative alive all these years. She regularly brought up my betrayal at family gatherings, often tearfully explaining how she still felt guilty for not stopping me sooner. She's such a good girl, Carmen continued. She visits your parents every Sunday, helps with the bakery books, and she's even been paying for some of Abuela Elena's medical bills that were still outstanding. My blood ran cold. What medical bills? Abuela Elena had insurance, and those bills were settled years ago. Carmen looked confused. Oh, you wouldn't know. Rebecca discovered that there were some experimental treatment bills that weren't covered. She's been paying them off slowly, about $500 a month. She never wanted your parents to worry about it. I realized immediately what was happening. Rebecca was using these fake medical bills as a way to funnel money from my parents to cover her gambling debts. She was stealing from them too, just more subtly. I thanked Carmen and left, my resolve strengthening. Rebecca wasn't just a thief, she was still actively victimizing our family. Next, I reached out to Mrs. Rodriguez, who had been Abuela Elena's best friend and neighbor for 40 years. She was now in her 80s and living in a nursing home, but her mind was sharp as ever. Mija, I always wondered about you, she said, holding my hands with surprising strength. Your abuela talked about you constantly. She was so proud of how responsible you were, how you helped her organize everything before she died. I leaned forward. Mrs. Rodriguez, do you remember anything unusual about the days right after Abuela's funeral? Her eyes sharpened. Oh yes. That sister of yours was there all the time, going through your grandmother's things. She told your parents she was looking for important papers, but I saw her carrying boxes to her car. I thought it was strange, because your abuela had always told me that you were the one she trusted with her important things. Mrs. Rodriguez's testimony would be crucial, but I needed more. I needed Rebecca to incriminate herself in front of witnesses who couldn't be dismissed or manipulated. I spent hours researching Rebecca's current situation. Through social media and public records, I discovered that she was indeed in serious financial trouble. Her house was in foreclosure, her car had been repossessed, and there were multiple judgments against her for unpaid debts. Most telling, she had started a GoFundMe page claiming she needed money for her children's medical expenses, another lie, since Carlos confirmed the kids were healthy and covered by his insurance. But the most important discovery came when I hired my private investigator to follow Rebecca for a week. The report was damning. She was visiting illegal gambling establishments almost every night, often staying until 3 or 4 in the morning. She had been seen arguing with several men who looked like loan sharks. Most importantly, she had been observed breaking into the bakery after hours on 2 separate occasions. I realized that Rebecca was stealing from the family business too. My parents, now in their 60s, had always been trusting with their books. Rebecca had convinced them to let her handle more and more of the financial aspects of the bakery, claiming she wanted to help them prepare for retirement. Armed with this information, I crafted the perfect trap. I knew Rebecca checked my social media obsessively. The private investigator had confirmed she had been stalking my online presence for years, probably looking for signs that I was successful or happy, which would threaten her narrative that I deserved my exile. So I posted something I knew she couldn't resist, a fake announcement that I had received a letter from a law firm regarding Abuela Elena's estate. I made it vague but intriguing, suggesting that there might have been assets that were never properly distributed. Sometimes the past finds a way to surface, I wrote. Just received some interesting documents about family matters that were thought to be settled long ago. Truth has a way of coming to light when you least expect it. #family, #justice, #truth. I made sure the post was public and tagged our hometown, knowing Rebecca would see it within hours. The response was immediate. My phone started buzzing with notifications. Rebecca had liked the post, then unliked it, then started commenting on other old posts of mine before deleting those comments too. She was panicking. But the real confirmation came the next day when Carlos called me. She's been calling me nonstop, he said, his voice tense. She wants to know if I've talked to you, if I know what you're planning. She's scared, Sophia. Really scared. What exactly did she say? She asked if I still had any documents from our divorce, specifically anything related to her finances. When I said I might, she offered me $10,000 to destroy everything. She said you were trying to destroy the family and that I needed to protect our children from whatever lies you were spreading. I smiled grimly. Did you agree? I told her I'd think about it. But Sophia, she mentioned something else. She said she might need to handle the situation before it got out of control. I think she's planning something. That was exactly what I was hoping for. Desperate people make mistakes, and I was about to give Rebecca the perfect opportunity to expose herself in front of the people who mattered most. I scheduled a meeting with my parents for the following Sunday afternoon at the bakery. I told them I had important information about the family that they needed to hear, but I didn't specify what it was about. I knew Rebecca would find out about the meeting. I was counting on it. Then I took the most important step. I contacted Detective Maria Santos from the Fraud Division of the local police department. I presented her with all the evidence I had gathered about Rebecca's crimes. While she couldn't arrest Rebecca without more investigation, she agreed to be present as a witness when I confronted my family, since identity theft and fraud were serious felonies. Are you sure you want to do this publicly? Detective Santos asked. We could handle this through official channels, press charges, and let the courts sort it out. Detective, my sister destroyed my relationship with my family for 13 years. She's been stealing from them all this time, and they don't even know it. They deserve to hear the truth from me, and they deserve to see exactly who Rebecca really is when she's cornered. The detective nodded. I understand. Just be prepared. Family confrontations like this can get volatile. If she's as desperate as you say, she might do something unpredictable. I spent the rest of the week preparing for Sunday. I organized all the evidence into a clear, chronological presentation. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would present the information, and how I would handle Rebecca's inevitable denials and counterattacks. But most importantly, I prepared myself emotionally for the possibility that even with overwhelming evidence, my parents might still choose to believe Rebecca. After 13 years of thinking I was the villain, they might not be ready to accept that they had been wrong about everything. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood. As I drove to the bakery where I had spent so many happy hours with Abuela Elena, I realized that this confrontation would either restore my family or destroy any remaining hope of reconciliation forever. Either way, the truth was finally going to come out. I arrived at the bakery 15 minutes early, my hands trembling as I unlocked the door with the spare key Mrs. Rodriguez had given me years ago, the one my parents didn't know still existed. The familiar smell of cinnamon and vanilla hit me like a wave of memories. Everything looked exactly the same, except for the new security cameras Rebecca had convinced my parents to install. Detective Santos arrived shortly after, dressed in plain clothes as we had agreed. She positioned herself at a corner table where she could observe everything while appearing to be just another customer. My parents walked in at exactly 2 o'clock, looking older and more tired than I remembered. My mother's hair was completely gray now, and my father moved with the careful steps of someone whose back ached constantly. For a moment, my resolve wavered. These people had raised me, loved me, and I was about to shatter their world. Sophia, my mother said quietly, her voice neutral. You said you had something important to tell us. Before I could respond, the door chimed again. Rebecca walked in, and I had to hide my shock at her appearance. The golden girl I remembered was gone, replaced by someone who looked desperate and hollow. Her blonde hair was unwashed and pulled back severely. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her clothes hung loosely on her frame. What is she doing here? Rebecca demanded, pointing at me. Mom, Dad, you can't seriously be listening to anything she has to say after what she did. My father held up his hand. Rebecca, we agreed to hear what Sophia has to say. 13 years is a long time. Maybe it's time we all talked. I pulled out my laptop and the folder of documents. Thank you for coming. I know this is difficult, but I've discovered some things about what really happened when Abuela Elena died. Things that are going to shock you. Rebecca laughed, but it sounded forced. Oh, this should be good. What? Are you going to try to blame me for your theft now? Actually, yes, I said calmly, pressing play on the audio file. I'm going to let you explain it yourself. Rebecca's own voice filled the bakery. The stupid bitch still doesn't know that Abuela left her more than just that 50,000. There were bonds, Carlos. Bearer bonds worth another 150,000. The color drained from Rebecca's face as her recorded confession played. My parents sat in stunned silence, listening to their golden child detail exactly how she had stolen from our grandmother and framed me for it. That's not real. Rebecca shouted when the recording ended. She faked it somehow. You can fake anything with computers now. I calmly pulled out the private investigator's report. These are bank records, Rebecca. They show you accessing Abuela's safety deposit box the day after her funeral. They show you pawning her jewelry over the course of several months. They show credit cards and loans taken out in Abuela Elena's name for the past 13 years. My mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. My father's face had turned stone cold, an expression I remembered from my childhood when he was truly angry. Rebecca, he said slowly, is this true? Of course not. She's lying. She's always been jealous of me, and now she's trying to destroy our family. Rebecca was backing toward the door, but I had anticipated this. There's more, I continued, pulling out photos of Rebecca at the illegal gambling establishments. These were taken last week. And these, I showed them the fake medical bills, are the bills you've been paying for Abuela Elena. Bills that don't exist, for a woman who died 13 years ago. My mother started crying. Not the quiet tears of sadness, but the deep, racking sobs of someone whose world was collapsing. Rebecca made a desperate play. Even if some of this is true, you abandoned this family. You never tried to fight for us. You just left. I was 18 years old. I stood up, my voice rising for the first time. I tried to fight. I begged you to listen, to investigate, to check the bank cameras. But you had already decided I was guilty based on her lies. My father was reading through the documents with shaking hands. When he got to the page detailing Rebecca's current debts, he looked up with an expression I had never seen before. Rebecca, you owe $300,000? To loan sharks? Rebecca realized her carefully constructed facade was crumbling. I can explain everything. Yes, I made some mistakes, but... Mistakes? I interrupted. You stole from our dying grandmother. You destroyed priceless family recipes. You got me exiled from my own family for 13 years. You've been stealing from mom and dad with fake medical bills. And you've been using Abuela's identity to commit fraud. My mother looked up through her tears. The recipes. You said the recipes were destroyed, that Sophia had torn them up. But you found copies. Rebecca's face went pale. She had forgotten about that lie. I had saved some of them before she. The recipes hanging in the kitchen right now, my father said slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. Are those the originals, Rebecca? The silence stretched for an eternity. Rebecca looked around the room like a trapped animal, her eyes wild. You want to know the truth? She suddenly screamed. Fine. Yes, I took the money. Yes, I destroyed some stupid old recipes. But you know what? I deserved it. She was always the favorite. Perfect Sophia with her perfect grades and her perfect relationship with Abuela. I was tired of being second best. My parents stared at her in horror. Detective Santos quietly stood up and moved closer, ready to intervene if necessary. I needed that money. Rebecca continued, her voice getting higher. And when I found out there was more, hidden in bonds that the old woman never even told you about, I took that too. She was dead. What did it matter? What did it matter? My mother whispered. Rebecca, how could you say that? And you know what the best part was? Rebecca's eyes were now fixed on me with pure hatred. Watching Miss Perfect get kicked out on her ass. Watching you all choose me over her. I finally won. The room fell silent except for my mother's quiet crying. Rebecca seemed to realize what she had just confessed to, but it was too late. Detective Santos stepped forward. Rebecca Martinez, You're under arrest for identity theft, wire fraud, theft, and filing false police reports." As the handcuffs clicked around Rebecca's wrists, she looked at me with venomous eyes. "This isn't over, Sophia. You think you've won, but you've destroyed this family. Mom and Dad will never forgive themselves for choosing me over you. You've ruined everything." But as I looked at my parents, who were both reaching toward me with tears in their eyes, I realized that Rebecca was wrong. She hadn't destroyed our family. She had just revealed who we really were underneath all the lies. The hours after Rebecca's arrest passed in a surreal blur of police statements, paperwork, and painful conversations. My parents and I sat in the bakery long after Detective Santos left with Rebecca, surrounded by the evidence of 13 years of deception. My mother couldn't stop apologizing. "Sophia, mi amor, how do we even begin to make this right? We threw you away. Our own daughter. We threw you away based on lies." My father, normally a man of few words, was even quieter than usual. He kept picking up the documents, reading them again as if hoping they would say something different. Finally, he looked at me with eyes full of regret. "I failed you as a father. I was supposed to protect you, to believe in you, and instead I let jealousy and manipulation tear our family apart." The next few days brought an avalanche of revelations as authorities investigated Rebecca's crimes. The scope of her deception was staggering. She had been stealing from the bakery for years, skimming money from the daily deposits and covering it up by manipulating the books. She had taken out a second mortgage on my parents' house without their knowledge, forging their signatures with practiced ease. She had even been collecting disability benefits in Abuela Elena's name for the past 5 years. Carlos called me with updates from the jail. Rebecca was refusing to speak to attorneys, insisting that I had somehow orchestrated everything as revenge. She was demanding that our parents bail her out, claiming that family should stick together no matter what. "She's completely delusional," Carlos told me. "She's telling anyone who will listen that you're the real criminal, that you somehow faked all the evidence. She can't accept that her lies have finally caught up to her." The financial damage was devastating. My parents discovered that their retirement savings had been almost completely drained. The bakery was mortgaged beyond its value. They were facing bankruptcy at ages 64 and 62, with their golden child in jail and their honest daughter estranged for over a decade. But the emotional damage was even worse. My mother developed severe anxiety, barely able to leave the house. She kept calling me, sometimes in tears, asking how she could have been so blind. My father threw himself into trying to save the bakery, working 16-hour days to make up for years of Rebecca's theft. The extended family's reaction was swift and brutal. Aunt Carmen called me, sobbing, to apologize for years of cold treatment. We all believed her, Sophia. She was so convincing, so sweet when she talked about how guilty she felt about what happened. We thought we were protecting the family by supporting your parents' decision. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in over a decade reached out on social media, offering awkward apologies and invitations to family gatherings. Some of them had always had doubts, they claimed, but hadn't felt comfortable speaking up. Mrs. Rodriguez, despite her age, insisted on writing a detailed statement for the police about everything she had witnessed in the days after Abuela Elena's funeral. "That girl fooled everyone," she told me during one of my visits to the nursing home. "But your abuela always said you had integrity. She would be so proud of how you handled this." The media picked up the story within a week. "Local woman clears her name after 13 years of false accusations," read the headline in our small-town newspaper. The article detailed Rebecca's arrest and the family's reconciliation, painting me as a victim who had persevered despite being wrongly accused. But the attention felt hollow. Yes, I had been vindicated, but at what cost? My parents were financially ruined. My sister was facing serious prison time. Our family name, which had been respected in the community for 3 generations through the bakery, was now associated with scandal and theft. Rebecca's children, my nephew and niece who I barely knew, were staying with Carlos full-time while their mother sat in jail. They were 8 and 10 years old, old enough to understand that their mother had done something terrible, but too young to process the full scope of her betrayal. Carlos asked if I would consider meeting them, helping them understand that not all family relationships were built on lies and manipulation. When I met Emily and Diego for the first time at a local park, I saw so much of my childhood self in them. They were cautious, polite, and clearly struggling with the idea that adults they trusted could lie to them. Emily, the older one, asked me directly, "Are you really the bad aunt who stole from great-grandma?" I knelt down to her level. "No, sweetheart. Your mom made some very bad choices and then lied about them for a long time. But that doesn't mean all adults lie, and it doesn't mean you're responsible for what she did." Diego, quieter and more thoughtful, asked, "Will we still have a family now?" That question hit me harder than anything else had. These children were innocent victims of Rebecca's selfishness, just like I had been. But unlike me, they were young enough to heal, young enough to learn what healthy family relationships looked like. The week before Rebecca's sentencing hearing, she finally agreed to see me. The jail visit was surreal. My sister sat across from me in an orange jumpsuit, looking smaller and more defeated than I had ever seen her. "Are you happy now?" were her first words to me. "You got what you wanted." "I'm ruined, Mom and Dad are ruined, and you get to be the hero who saved everyone." I studied her face, looking for any sign of remorse or understanding. There was none. "Rebecca, I never wanted any of this. I wanted my family back. I wanted the truth. I wanted justice for Abuela Elena's memory." She laughed bitterly. "Justice? You want to talk about justice? You got 13 years of freedom while I was stuck here dealing with Mom and Dad's expectations, running the bakery, taking care of everyone else's problems. Do you know how suffocating it was to always be the good daughter? Even facing prison time, even confronted with overwhelming evidence of her crimes, Rebecca still saw herself as the victim. She had convinced herself so completely that her lies were justified that she couldn't accept responsibility for the pain she had caused. "I hope it was worth it," she said as I got up to leave. "Because you'll never have a normal relationship with them now. They'll spend the rest of their lives trying to make it up to you, and you'll spend the rest of yours wondering if they really forgive you or if they're just guilty." As I walked out of the jail, I realized that Rebecca was probably right about one thing: our family would never be normal again. Too much damage had been done, too many years had been lost. But maybe normal wasn't what we needed. Maybe we needed something better: a family built on truth instead of lies, on chosen love instead of blind loyalty, on earned trust instead of assumed forgiveness. Rebecca was sentenced to 8 years in prison with restitution requirements that would follow her for the rest of her life. The judge was particularly harsh because of the elder abuse aspect of her crimes and the fact that she had maintained her deception for over a decade. During her sentencing, she finally showed emotion, not remorse, but anger that everyone had turned against her. In the months that followed, my relationship with my parents slowly began to heal, but it was different than either of us expected. We couldn't simply pick up where we left off when I was 18. I was now a successful 31-year-old woman with my own life, my own support system, and my own way of seeing the world. They were older, humbler, and carrying the weight of having failed their daughter when she needed them most. The healing process was complicated and sometimes painful. My mother went through phases of overwhelming guilt, trying to overcompensate by calling me multiple times a day and wanting to be involved in every aspect of my life. My father dealt with his guilt by throwing himself into practical solutions, trying to figure out how to pay me back money I had never asked for, researching ways to restore the stolen family recipes, working to rebuild the bakery's reputation. I had to set boundaries. "Mom, Dad, I love you, but I'm not the same person I was at 18. We can't erase 13 years. We have to build something new." It took family therapy, something my traditional Mexican parents were initially resistant to, for us to start having honest conversations. Dr. Williams, our therapist, helped us understand that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and that rebuilding trust is a process, not a single decision. The financial situation was grim but not hopeless. I used some of my business success to help my parents avoid bankruptcy, but I made it clear that this was a loan with terms, not charity. They needed to maintain their dignity, and I needed to protect myself from becoming an enabler like they had been with Rebecca. More importantly, I helped them develop systems to prevent future financial abuse. We set up accounts that required multiple signatures, hired a bookkeeper to handle the bakery's finances, and established clear boundaries about family members having access to business funds. The most healing part of this journey was working with Emily and Diego. Carlos and I developed a co-parenting relationship that gave the children stability while their mother was in prison. I became the aunt who taught them about their great-grandmother's recipes, about family history that wasn't tainted by lies, and about how to identify and resist manipulation. Emily, now 9, was particularly perceptive. Aunt Sophia, why did my mom lie about everything? Sometimes people make bad choices because they're scared or jealous, and then they make more bad choices to cover up the first ones. Eventually, the lies become so big that they feel like they can't tell the truth anymore. But you told the truth even when it was hard. Yes, because the truth is the only foundation you can build a real life on. Lies always collapse eventually. Diego, more artistic like his great-great-grandmother had been, loved learning the family recipes. We spent hours in my kitchen, making pan dulce and empanadas while I told him stories about Abuela Elena that Rebecca had never bothered to share. The bakery slowly recovered. My parents, now in their mid-60s, decided to transition it into a family heritage business that celebrated our Mexican roots and Abuela Elena's legacy. We created a small museum area with restored family photos and recipes, and a percentage of profits went to a scholarship fund for first-generation college students, something that felt like honoring the education dreams Abuela Elena had wanted for me. I also made peace with the extended family, but on my terms. I attended gatherings when I wanted to, skipped events that felt forced, and didn't pretend that 13 years of exile could be erased with a few apologetic phone calls. Some relationships were rebuilt stronger than before, others remained cordial but distant, and a few people who couldn't admit their own complicity in my exile found themselves excluded from my life permanently. The most unexpected gift was the chosen family I discovered I had built during my years alone. My business partner Sarah, who had become like a sister to me. My neighbor Janet, who had been my emergency contact for years. The book club women who had celebrated my successes and supported me through failures. These people had known me without the burden of family history, and their love was unconditional in a way that felt revolutionary. When Carlos remarried 2 years later, I was honored to be asked to stand with him at his wedding. His new wife, Patricia, was a kindergarten teacher who adored Emily and Diego and understood the complex situation she was entering. At the reception, watching my nephew and niece dance with their new stepmother while their biological mother remained in prison, I felt a deep sense of peace about the price of truth. Mrs. Rodriguez passed away peacefully at age 84, but not before seeing the family recipes restored and the bakery thriving again. Her last words to me were, "Your abuela is watching, Mija, and she's so proud." Today, 5 years after that confrontation in the bakery, my life looks nothing like I expected it would. I have a complicated but honest relationship with my parents. I have a chosen family that spans generations and bloodlines. I have a successful business and a home filled with both inherited family treasures and new memories I've created myself. Rebecca will be eligible for parole in 3 more years. I don't know if she's learned anything from her time in prison, and, honestly, I don't need her to. My healing isn't dependent on her redemption. My family's restoration isn't contingent on her apology. Some betrayals are so fundamental that forgiveness means moving forward without the person who caused the harm, not welcoming them back into your life. I think about Abuela Elena often, especially when I'm teaching Emily and Diego to make her mole recipe, or when I catch my father humming the old songs she used to sing while she cooked. The theft of her money was devastating, but the theft of 13 years of family connections was worse. Yet somehow, in losing everything, I found out who I really was and who my real family could be. The recipes hang in the bakery again, restored from copies that loyal customers had saved over the years. The family continues, stronger and more honest than before. And every morning when I wake up, I know that I sleep peacefully because my life is built on truth, not lies. So here's what I want to ask all of you who followed this incredible journey with me. Have you ever experienced family betrayal that shattered your world, only to discover it led you to something better? How did you rebuild trust after someone you loved destroyed it? Share your stories in the comments below because I've learned that we heal together, not alone. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family, justice, and finding your way back to truth. And please share this with anyone who needs to hear that sometimes losing your family is the only way to find your real one. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the truth really does set you free, even when the price of freedom feels too high to pay. May you find the courage to choose truth over comfort, and may you discover that real family is built on love and honesty, not blood and obligation.